Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Marr. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. All right, everybody, welcome to The Longer Game, where we talk about the future of retail. I probably should have adjusted my mic before we started. But anyway, today on the show, I have an awesome guest with me, one of the few people that I've actually met in person before recording, which is cool. And it is John Lee. He's the co-founder of PickFu. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Michael. So glad to be talking to you.
Well, I am a fun person to talk to.
You are.
And I actually met someone last week at Shop Talk. This is going to air way after that, but I met someone at Shop Talk who is going to be recording tomorrow after you. So that will be like maybe I want to say third person or so that I've met, maybe third or fourth person I met out of the 30-something guests. So it's cool to actually make that in-person connection. And it kind of speaks to the direction that it seems like stuff from a trade perspective and even retail perspective is starting to move more back into person. Like I've seen a lot of brands that are moving or thinking about in-store and what that looks like. And really that's still where, as much as like I'm focused on e-commerce, I know you are as well. So there's still a big portion of product that's being purchased in store.
I hear in person is a hot new thing.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because I know kids who went through that and were at home are like getting back out maybe in preschool or kindergarten or something. They were not used to that. And so socializing is very different from them. I've heard my sister say like kids are just not used to, because I have a niece who's, under 5 and she's just like, it's very different right now.
I have some younger kids and we've spoken to their teachers and they're saying the same thing about just the classes from the past couple of years, needing to socialize, all of that stuff. So it's been crazy.
I mean, it really is going to be something that I think my daughter's 10. I think she's going to look back and be like, kids, when I was your age, I had to go through the pandemic. I don't know why she's going to talk like she's from the country, because she's not. But anyway, so John, tell us a little bit more, just kind of high level about PickFu, like what you do.
Yeah, so PickFu is a self-service consumer research platform that anyone can use to get fast, reliable feedback from real people. So you don't need to be a market research expert or hire one to use PickFu. You just go on the platform, create a poll, choose your target audience, and in minutes you start getting real feedback from your target audience about anything about your business, packaging, creative assets, marketing, so on.
So one of the ways that you and I cross paths is because a lot of brands and agencies alike are utilizing PickFu. I really should have made sure my mic was in the right spot beforehand, but it's live. So, well, not live, but it's authentic. Let's say that.
Yes, it's very genuine. Yes,
very genuine. But a lot of people are using PickFu to determine, hey, what are good product images for my listing on Amazon? And I know lots of other agency owners that use it, brands that utilize it, and you've mentioned that before, but that is not necessarily how it started. So I'm curious, how did PickFu get to the place where it is this I know you've got a couple of verticals that you work in, but Amazon is a big one where
Yeah.
you're
Hmm.
focused on the, consumer research side of things.
Yeah, that's a fun story. And so um, my co-founder Justin and I, we built PickFu for ourselves to solve our own problems, as sort of all great fun tools begin. So many years ago, we were working on a different business. We were building websites, and it was just the two of us. As two engineers, we always debated. We always had debates about design options, what color to use, what headline to use, what do we think about this logo, what do we think about this kind of marketing asset. Being engineers and product people, had like, how do you solve a problem like that? We built a tool to do it. By
It
that
wasn't a
point,
creative, like, I feel this, I feel this. It was like, let's build a tool to figure out how to
no,
make this work.
yeah, it was the we need to get unbiased feedback and settle this debate between the two of us. And our friends and family were tired of us asking for feedback from them constantly, right? And as any entrepreneur knows, you turn to your friends and family in inner circles first. You ask them, they're always supportive. And because they love you and they're unbiased. And at a certain point, they get a little tired of providing feedback anyways. So we built the tool to get us unbiased feedback as quickly as possible. And we built it in a way that was as simple, like stupid simple for us to use, and to get real unbiased, like written feedback back to us as quickly as possible. So that was the genesis of it years ago. And we put it on the side because we were still focused on our main project. It was a restaurant review site at the time. And it just kind of grew on its own. It started taking on a life of its own because other people started finding it, using it, realizing that getting feedback that quickly, oftentimes in under half an hour, really unlocked a lot of utility, a lot of value for them to actually use it in their day-to-day jobs, like while they were actually doing the work. And so over time, it started growing, the product started growing in different verticals, and eventually it found its way to the Amazon ecosystem, where people who are selling online on Amazon can use it to choose better main images in under an hour. That correlates to real world results, where they switch it on Amazon and immediately they see like a 10-15% increase in session rates, which directly leads to more sales.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just origin stories
Yeah.
are interesting in general, but I think that like the one of the utilities of PickFu, because I've used it myself, is the quickness. I
Hmm.
think I don't know what regular consumer like market research, how long it would take, but my guess is if you're doing in-person stuff, you have to qualify people, you have to get an audience in a room, you have to set up you have to do all the stuff that's necessary. That could take a month to do that. And I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons why e-commerce has continued to grow, and I mean it grew during the pandemic because of people not going out of their houses or not wanting to leave, but the ease of use makes it so. I mean, like there were maybe Instacart deliveries or other things like that, but I mean e-commerce specifically really grew because ease of use, and so you can get results so quickly and you can iterate quickly. And I think that's one of the things that e-commerce brands, and I would maybe even say not necessarily smaller brands, but maybe newer, tend to have a bias to action.
Hmm.
Whereas older, more legacy brands take time. Let me run it through this person. Let me run it through this person. And there's a good and bad of that. Maybe something bad, you don't let something bad out, quickly, a bad product or something like that. It makes it through a lot of different in a legacy brand. It makes it through a lot of different phases, and then someone's like, oh, this is actually a bad product. But you can actually iterate really quickly from an e-commerce perspective, and that allows you to determine like I mean, like if you look at it from a sales perspective, get to yes, no, or maybe really quickly. So you can do that and say this is a bum product, or this is great, or hey, this other thing is working really well. And that kind of testing, A/B testing, has become really big across e-commerce, and I think it's because people realize that the I feel like how sometimes what a consumer says isn't necessarily what they will do. So you could
Sure.
say, "Hey, what do you, which product do you prefer?" But then when you actually get someone to take action on something, it's very very different.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that analogy towards like Instacart and sort of the um the speed at which things move nowadays is a really good one. We actually have a lot of traditional CPG companies using PickFu, even though they're in large organizations that have consumer insights teams set up. And what they tell us is that PickFu is basically taking the same enterprise grade consumer insights, but putting it at their fingertips. Because traditionally, in those large sort of, let's call them stodgy organizations,
Yeah.
what they would need to do is they would need to have a large enough problem, like what is the market size for, honey nut Cheerios mint flavor in Oregon or something
That
like
sounds
that, right?
terrible, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I've had better. I swear I cook better than that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but let's say they need to have a big enough problem. Then they need to go to the insights team. The insights team needs to put together a research plan. The insights team needs to go to talk to some other market research agency. The market research agency puts together a proposal for the insights team. And all that back and forth to set up a project that probably takes a couple of months, a couple of weeks to field the targeting and the actual responses. Then another couple of weeks to actually come together and write a report on that. And what we're trying to do at PickFu is shortcut all of that in a self-service way with software, the targeting, the high quality, all of that stuff, analyzing the results, take that entire process, shortcut it, and put it in the hands of the people actually doing the work. And so what that means is that now if you're working in Procter and Gamble, or you're trying to decide on that flavor or that packaging of Honey Nut Cheerios mint or chocolate or whatever, now you can actually run the test yourself. We can guide you through it, and you can get results the same day, so you can have those insights from your target customers.
I think I know that having information like that from the doer, like you said, putting in the hands of the person that doing it is super powerful. I know that sometimes, uh, a sales team might get a script from a marketing person, like
Yeah,
this is what you should say to this person on the phone when you're prospecting them, and the marketing person is going to come up with something really nice and sexy and elaborate. And a lot of times, if you're on the phone and you're prospecting someone and your goal is like to get a call or just to qualify this person, you don't have the time to be sexy. You're interrupting someone's day. You have to get
absolutely.
to the point. And so being able to work together is great, but being able to utilize that information in your current job that you have is super powerful. I'm curious. It seems like people or brands, excuse me, I should say. I mean, people behind the brands, but it seems like
Right.
brands on the Amazon marketplace, there still is so much leveling up to do. The ones that are crushing it are really embracing new trends, lifestyle with text overlay, getting past
Totally.
USBs, all that stuff, like maybe 3D renderings. They're really embracing the future. But then there's just this huge. I mean, I guess I don't even feel like it's early adopters at this point. It's just people are operating on Amazon like it was 2018, 2016, something like that, when ads wasn't even a big component and the creative was just okay. What's the biggest shift that you've seen from brands that leverage PickFu? Like, what's the biggest insight you think that they gain from using the tool, and how is that changing how they actually operate on the marketplace? Because I imagine
Yeah.
they use it once and it's like, okay, this makes sense, use it again and again, but then that could totally change a process internally for them of how they even go about doing something.
Oh, they actually do change their process internally for like when they go about building that collateral. Actually, it's really interesting to see. So, um, a lot of the largest sellers on Amazon, they've incorporated PickFu into their day-to-day production process, because they'll run creatives through PickFu, read the comments, go back and iterate and run another test. And so we see a lot of testing, not just of options of, say, a main image versus two or three or four other options for that main image, but we see a lot of competitive testing as well. So not only is there iteration on the best image or package or product packaging or whatnot for their product, they're also using PickFu to do competitive tests, like like a digital focus group to do competitive tests against the best sellers in their categories. And so what we've seen over time, we've seen evolutions of product image layouts in specific categories on PickFu that then spread within a category. So for example, there's one category, I think this is last year, they sold packages. I'm not going to name the category, but it was basically like a package with a number of different items inside, and you could show it facing the left, facing to the right, like package open with assortment and so on. And we had one user who ended up discovering that, oh, if you have an image where the package is open and it's shaped and it's turned to a certain angle, and then you take all the accessories out and lay them all and fill up that white space, that beat the competition hands down very readily. So they did that switch. Within 3 months, that entire category just switched over. And now you look on that category on Amazon now, every single product photo, carton open, every single accessory laid out, filling the white space, text overlays, all of that stuff. So we're seeing the evolution of creative on Amazon occur within our system.
Man, that must be super validating from a product person standpoint, like knowing how something you're doing is changing. And honestly, they're beyond just creative. I mean, like creative is always going to be a part of it because it's visual, but there's definitely more utilities, beyond just that initial piece. So, I mean, that's really cool to hear. And this could go on your marketing reel, because I feel like there's just a lot of good praise for what you guys are doing right now. I'll give it to you for free, man. We'll chop it up for you and send it. But I mean, really, this is a time for people to come on and talk about the awesome stuff that they're doing. One of the I'm curious to know, when something like that happens, I mean, like, a 3-month changeover, that's a super quick time period. In retail, it might take, like, in-person retail, it might take years for something like that to change, because if you're thinking about digital shelf space, someone is creating that digital shelf space, that merchandising at an office or something somewhere, wherever they do that, then someone has to go in store and implement it. That would require a competitor going in store and analyzing that, which I'm sure that they're doing, but they're now having to go and analyze it. That again takes time, taking notes, sending it back to someone else. So you saw a whole category change in 3 months. That's super, super quick. And that, I think, speaks to the power of e-commerce and how, I mean, it's a gift and a curse, I guess, because things can iterate quickly. But now this brand, hopefully they've got, better product quality, but now this whole category has changed based on, something that they discovered.
That's the craziest thing about Amazon, particularly where it's a competitive marketplace, like the evolution of brands and of marketing, and product positioning on Amazon, totally specifically Amazon and other competitive marketplaces just changes so fast, right? It's such a fast follow situation. Obviously for other like DTC brands, you have the opportunity to own the customer on your site and have a little more sort of one-on-one experience with your customers. So, but overall, just the speed of the internet and sort of how fast sites can change and sites can update and so on. Speed kills, I guess, for better or for worse.
Man, that's a great one-liner. I just had a great idea. I think I'm gonna have, I'm gonna get a picture of my wife and I and just say who looks more friendly, and then I'll give that information to my daughter. And she's not going to care, but I just like that would be a funny poll to have kids be like, who seems more mean or who seems cooler? That could get really dangerous.
It can be pretty dangerous. We've had people test their profile photos and stuff on PickFu. The panelists are very unbiased and will not hold back. So,
but honestly, I think I'd rather someone be like, man, your teeth look really weird in that, and then putting it out in front of a bunch of people. And I think, maybe sometimes people go a little hard, but I think the honesty is, like, sometimes people are thinking something. Like, I guess another way of putting, and they don't say it, another way of putting that is like, everybody needs a Larry David, someone that can say something that you're like, oh, I guess everyone was kind of thinking that, but why didn't anyone say it? Because they're worried about offending someone or how it's going to come off. But sometimes It's like, hey, this isn't meant to hurt or offend. This is just my perspective.
It
Maybe
just
that helps
is.
you. Yeah, it just kind of is the way it is.
Yeah.
When I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about generative AI at some point.
Sure.
And again, I'm going to be like, 5 months behind whenever this comes out, but I'm okay with that. But I think one of the people worry about, the Isaac Asimov robots are going to become sentient and take over the world. And I think that's a funny idea, but I don't think it's really possible. And the differentiation between humans and machines is humans have that creative component that is thinking up new. And as we're talking about this brand that, your software, and I know it's not necessarily generative AI, but it's technology is where I'm going with this. Technology allows you to leverage your creativity more. So they've said, hey, let's try a bunch of different things maybe. Your software didn't say, do this, do this, do this. It just said, hey, what do you want to test? That's where the human mind comes in, and it can be really creative. And so then you could say, hey, we could test something that is a huge flop, but now we know, and this other thing worked really well, but that gives you an idea to create and takes maybe the stress of saying, how do I go about collecting all this information, and turns into something really easy. And that's where something like, I think, a chat GPT or any kind of generative AI allows you to say, hey, here's my creative mind. Can you kind of help automate this process? And that is something that I think is changing retail, is anything that can be automated that allows you to focus on that creative side. Like, yes, there might be jobs that technology takes, but there's always going to be a different elevation or need for someone to create something new or invent or program those things. Like the software doesn't program itself. Am I wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I mean, that's a good point. And like, I think, one, we've talked to a handful of product designers, designers of like real world products, and then also packaging designers as well as artists and stuff in other verticals that we service. And one thing that they've mentioned about PickFu is that they really enjoy that PickFu actually lets them be more creative, because they know that PickFu is the sandbox to test with the real consumer afterwards. So they can try their crazy ideas, right? And not have to worry about whether or not it's going to be a flop, because they can pre-test in the sandbox on PickFu and really understand what the consumer thinks. Tying back to your previous question about sort of trends that we've seen over time on Amazon, one trend that we have seen more and more is the usage of 3D renders of products instead of actual photos of products, right? You can do a lot more with a 3D render, put it in a different sort of environment and sort of smooth out the edges and all that other stuff. And so we've definitely seen the rise of 3D renders. And now more recently with generative AI, we've seen the rise of generative AI product photos, right? Like the generative AI tools are just sort of a multiplier of creativity to really explore all these different facets and make it easier than ever to come up with a lot of potential ways to position, whether it's your brand or your product or whatever it is that you're creating. We think that's a great thing from our perspective, because after you've created things using AI and been creative, you can always turn to the real consumer, which is who PickFu taps into, and actually get their feedback on the things that you've gone out and tried to be creative with. So you create with generative AI, test on PickFu. It's been great. We're also working AI into our platform as well to help summarize the feedback from our panelists as well.
I love hearing that, and I am finding ways to embrace that in my life. And I think for someone that's not very tech savvy, it could be daunting because they just don't know where to begin. But one of the things that I think is so cool about generative AI, or honestly just anything, this is maybe just my personality, but you just get out and experiment. Like,
totally.
I had a friend over having some bourbon, a guy who is a small business owner that I mentor, and just cool dude, and he makes river tables. So,
Hmm.
like big pieces of wood, and they've got the looks like a river is essentially running through it, and there's a specific way to make those tables. So I was talking about this with him, and I
Really
said,
cool.
"Hey, let's ask Chat GPT how do you make a river table?" And so we were watching the results come up. He's like, "Okay, yeah, that's right, that's right." That's right. Okay, he's like, I'm interested to see what they say next. And the next part was like, you have to pour hot epoxy in it. He's like, yep, that's right. And he's like, I wonder what the next thing is they're going to say, because there's a very crucial step. Then you have to use like a blowtorch essentially and heat it up to get all the bubbles out. He's like, yep, that's exactly it. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Now, the thing about generative AI is it's still not going to create that table for you.
Exactly.
You have to go and create the table. There will always be a need for physical stuff. I mean, unless, I don't know, did you ever see the movie Her?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
with Joaquin Phoenix
Uh-huh.
and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, that was such a
What's
good
an earbud? Yeah.
Yeah. For anyone who has not seen
So
that
good.
movie, I would highly recommend it because it really blurs the lines of fantasy and reality. And I honestly think I could sort of see that happening. And just some of the scenes in there are like, oh my gosh, hey, whoever thought this up was like a genius, but also a little crazy. But I kind of like it. I like that they really thought like, where could we go with this? And great twist at the end. But anyway, there's always going to be need for those physical human components, and that I think is the downside of technology is it removes us from that. And there are, I think, younger generations. I'm young enough, but younger generations that grew up with text only, not calling. I was talking with some business owners at Shop Talk about how there's if you're calling the house to talk to a boy or a girl, there's no. I mean, I think it's probably more scary from a boy's perspective. I don't know. That's the only perspective I have. But calling and saying, "Hey, can I talk to Julie?" Like, yeah, who is this? You have to get through the parents first. There's not necessarily any of that anymore. That's
a really good point. Yeah,
it's not even instant messenger. It's like texting or DMs on Instagram or something like that. Like it's direct content, direct access to that person, which is a totally different perspective. And so it can make. I remember during the pandemic, my daughter had met someone who she had a ton of calls on Facebook, Kids Messenger.
Yeah,
and they met in person for the first time, and my daughter had been to school, so it wasn't like she wasn't interacting, but the first part of that relationship was all digital. And so when they met each other, they were just kind of like, hi.
awkward.
Yeah,
Hey.
very awkward. I'm like, you can say hi, like, open your eyes, smile, shake hands, whatever. So that is a big change, but there's still a need for physicality, which I guess is just me waxing philosophical. But I am curious on your thoughts when we talk about, or when people are using 3D rendering. I wonder if it gets to a point where, if you've seen anything where consumers are saying, like, it looks great, but then when they get it in person, I don't know that you're testing that, but when they get it in person, maybe they're disappointed because it wasn't quite as sharp or as clean, or maybe they're just not paying attention to that because it's a physical product and they're not expecting it to be a render.
Yeah, we don't tie into the other side in terms of getting the feedback after the person has bought the product. But I think in the tests of 3D renders that we have seen, some of the notable comments we had that caught my eye were there's definitely a consumer sensitivity to over rendering.
Okay.
Right. So it's I mean, I think uncanny valley is kind of I think that's a wrong term here, but it's like you want it to look realistic, but not overly rendered, right? Because at that point, the gig is kind of up with the consumer that, oh, wait, this is computer generated. Then a lot of them would say that, oh, I would expect that the real product probably isn't as good as this because this one just looks like super rendered.
That's like, I honestly feel like that could be like humans in plastic surgery. Like it could be good.
Oh, I know.
Be good to a certain point, but then you're like, you definitely over rendered.
That is exactly that's the perfect analogy here. Is like you don't want to over plastic surgery your images or.
Man, so many parallels that. Or you look at something like anime where the women are just like so Like
outrageous.
You know that a guy in his basement somewhere was the one who was drawing this like fantasy woman. And the thing is, like, that's not even the most important part about, you know, having a physical relationship with someone, but it's like the over fantasization. I don't even know if that's a word, but just totally turning something into a fantasy, and that's where it becomes unreal and unrealistic. And you basically are putting filler in your images,
exactly.
You know, if you're over rendering. So there still seems to be a line. I think that's part of why things will remain in a place for humans where there has to be a physical component, or that physical component has to match up with reality. Because if someone, you know, is expecting a spaceship and, you know, they get a little cardboard box, they're going to be pissed.
Yeah. I mean, like e-tail and e-commerce unlocks all technology to present the best possible version of whatever it is that you're selling. But at the end of it, if that consumer buys and they're disappointed because what they received is not what they thought they were going to get, like that's no recipe for like a lasting business, right?
I think that's a great place to end it. And I will just say to everybody out there, I think the best advice from this show I could get is don't over render. And that's in life or digitally.
Yes.
Because eventually you'll have to meet expectations.
Yeah.
Of the human who knows what's rendered and what's not rendered. So, John, thanks for coming on today. Tell people where they can find or locate you. Would maybe they find you somewhere creating another side business that grows into something big?
This is definitely our main business. We are passionate about being able to put consumer insights in the hands of people actually doing the work. So you can find PickFu on our website, pickfu.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. And most of the time I'll be heads down building more of PickFu.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for everyone for listening today. This has been The Longer Game. We're out.
Thanks.
All right. That was the show. What did you think? That was The Longer Game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, you can go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you're active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given up your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.